I rise to speak about a leader that we have lost, a leader who really did change this country. And not everyone who comes to this place and then leaves can say that they changed this country, but Susan Ryan indeed did. I often say I was lucky to grow up in Bob Hawke's Australia, but the reality is I was also lucky to grow up in Susan Ryan's Australia, the Australia that she built, that was a much fairer place than it was before she entered this place. Equality and opportunity for Susan Ryan weren't just words. They were her mission on the day that she was elected to this place and every day that she served as a senator. Born in the middle of World War II, studied an arts degree at Sydney University. Like my mum, she started her working life as a teacher, but she became Labor's first ACT senator in a time where we had finally legislated, the Whitlam government in 1974 legislated to create proper representation for the ACT. And it's amazing that to this day we still debate how do we make sure that the territories are indeed properly represented in the parliament. She was a feminist, she was pro-women, she was pro-choice, she was a Republican, and I've been lucky to be here listening to the speeches from the member for Newcastle, member for Brand, member for Macquarie, member for Kingston, member for Griffith. She genuinely inspired, encouraged and propelled a whole generation of future Labor leaders. She made Australia fairer for women, and when you make Australia fairer for women, you also made it fairer for men. There was no longer any effective subsidies for the employment of men because we finally got to a point where things were truly equal. Indeed, the legislation that she put through the parliament fulfilled Bob Hawke's promise of bringing Australia together. We've heard she did work with the women's electoral lobby, harnessing that power, that belief in collective organising, that you can actually change things, that you don't have to accept things as they are. Served at different times as Minister for Education, Minister for Youth Affairs, Minister assisting the Prime Minister on the status of women, Special Minister of State, which of course is an important portfolio for all of us who serve in this place, and for the Minister for the Bicentennial in 1988. She's served the country after she left this place as Age Discrimination Commissioner, as Disability Discrimination Commissioner, and indeed with the Whitlam Institute. The thing that strikes me in reading through so much of her life history and where she found herself in the 70s in this place is that it was 1977 when she becomes the first woman on the Labor front bench. The Labor Party had existed in this place for 77 years with no women on our front bench, and to think that we had, and indeed we'd had women elected some 30 years earlier with the Great West Australian Dorothy Tangney entering the Senate as the first woman in the Senate, first Labor woman in the Senate, but it had taken another 30 plus years for any representation on the front bench. And we know that you can't, without representation on that place, you don't truly have a voice at the table. I think also as someone myself who cares deeply about campaigning and making sure that Labor truly puts itself forward to all Australians, and I believe that Labor is the only party that can govern for all Australians, she was focused on the electoral challenge of the gender gap. That is, that decade on decade, women had not supported the Labor Party to the same extent that men had, and she had formed the National Women's Policy Committee with two aims. One, to ensure the improvement of Labor's policies for women, but also to make sure that we were communicating to women when they vote about why it is in their interests to vote Labor. The biography of Susan Ryan writes that she was alienated from conservative sectors of the community for being a feminist. I think that alienation, you read it today and it doesn't quite reflect the alienation that she would have faced on a daily basis. And indeed, at times, robust conversations within her own party. But she sort of continued to fight through, and I think that's the really amazing thing, is that not discouraged, not slowed down, actually saw that that was further confirmation that she was on the right track. I do want to pay tribute to the Canberra Times obituary that they published in their editorial, which also noted that this city of Canberra was part of what enabled her to flourish. The Canberra Times says, and I quote, "Like so many others, she discovered in Canberra a community in which she could flourish and grow." And I think that is a really lovely thing to say about our nation's capital, and sometimes the Canberra Times might over-defend Canberra, but on this occasion I think the Canberra Times is 100% right. I also note Eva Cox in what she had to say, and I think sometimes politics can lack optimism, and she notes, "Susan Ryan was an optimist," and I think that is another thing, that when you're trying to do big reform, you have to be optimistic about the benefits that it will bring, rather than just get stuck in the negativity of the current situation in which you're in. Eva Cox, and I quote, says, "Pessimism can be catching." She says, "I think too many on the left have caught it today, but unless you believe change is possible, there's no possibility for a better society." And so I want to pay tribute to the optimism of Susan Ryan as well. Finally, I just want to look at Susan Ryan's first speech, where she calls out very simply, in plain language that we probably don't use as much in this place today, she calls out, quote, "the sexist organisation of our society." And she talks about it, and it says, when she's talking about the representation of women, says that, actually, quote, "the sexist organisation of our society has many more important ramifications than the fact that there are not many women members in Parliament." That is not to say that those things are not important, but it is a reflection of a person who recognises that she was not in the Parliament to better herself. She was in the Parliament to better the thousands, and hundreds of thousands of women who needed a Parliament to do its job for them. And I just think that really struck me in reading her first speech. I'll finally just note that there is, on that issue of representation, there is still a long way to go. In our House of Representatives, just 31.1% of the membership are women, and often that's quoted as a good thing. Look how far we've come, look at what we've done, we've achieved. 31% is not an achievement. 31% is a sign that we have a very, very long way to go in this place, and therefore I think also a reflection that we probably have a long way to go in still bringing true gender equality across Australia. Vale, Susan Ryan.